Well, hello again. Welcome to our YouTube Simply the Bible broadcast. I hope you're enjoying this as we're going through the New Testament. Also, check out our podcast where we have gone through the entire Old Testament from Genesis through Malachi. We are continuing today in Matthew chapter 17. Have you ever felt like a failure? Have you ever felt that you have disappointed God or others? Then you know what it means to be human and to struggle with evil in a fallen world. It doesn't take long to see that we are struggling against a formidable power outside of ourselves. The Bible tells us that Satan is a real enemy who deceives so that he can destroy. Sometimes we feel impotent against this power. We imagine that the ones against us are more numerous and more powerful than those who are with us. Sometimes we feel like we are armed with nothing more than a pea shooter against an army of demons. How can we overcome evil? Peter, James, and John had an unforgettable experience on the high mountain. They saw Jesus transfigured before them so that his face shone like the sun and his clothes were brilliant white. Moses and Elijah also appeared conversing with Jesus. A cloud surrounded them, and a voice said, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. Hear him." Now, as they descended the mountain, Christ commanded them to tell no one what they had seen until after his resurrection. Now, what happened next is typical. They had experienced God above, but they would meet the devil below. And it seems that after every spiritual high where God does some new and wonderful work in our lives, the devil is just waiting at the bottom of the hill to rob or discourage us. We continue today in Matthew chapter 17, verse 14. And when they had come to the multitude, a man came to him, kneeling down to him and saying, "Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic and suffers severely, for he often falls into the fire and often into the water. So I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him." Mark gives us more details. As Jesus came to his other 9 disciples, there was a crowd surrounding them and scribes disputing with them. They were critical of the disciples because they didn't handle the situation the way they thought it should be handled. Matthew tells us that the boy was an epileptic. The Greek word is literally moonstruck, from which we derive the word lunatic. This came from the belief that lunacy, or mental illness as we would say today, fluctuated with phases of the moon. However, in this case, it was a demon who caused the boy's miserable condition so that it also made him deaf and mute. Now, our secular culture prides itself in medical knowledge and treats every kind of physical and mental disease with drugs, but it rarely recognizes the spiritual forces that may be at work. If we do not know the root cause of the problem, then how can we cure it? In chapter 10, Jesus sent out the 12 and gave them power to cast out demons, but here they were unable to deliver this youth from the unclean spirit. Then Jesus answered and said, "O faithless and perverse generation, how long shall I be with you? How long shall I bear with you? Bring him here to me." Now, Jesus had just been on the mountain receiving glory from his Father, who said, "This is my beloved Son, hear him." But now he encountered this failure from 9 of the 12 disciples whom he had chosen to carry on his work after he was gone. We feel the frustration of Jesus' heart as he lived in this sinful world. He addressed not only his disciples, but also the scribes and the surrounding crowd, the entire generation whom he called faithless and perverse. And that is just the state of the world today. Jesus knew that his time was running out. So how would they be ready to carry on after his departure? But Jesus did not allow his concern for these things to hinder his compassion. So he said to the Father, "Bring him here to me." And Jesus rebuked the demon, and it came out of him, and the child was cured from that very hour. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, "Why could we not cast it out?" No doubt the entire situation troubled the disciples. Not only did they not cast out the demon, but they felt like failures because they had displeased Jesus. They had followed the pattern of casting out demons that had worked before, so what happened this time? Jesus said to them, "Because of your unbelief. For assuredly I say to you, if you have faith as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. However, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting." Jesus identified the cause of their failure. The problem was unbelief. Now, isn't that the root of all spiritual failure? This was the difference between Jesus' ability and their disability. They didn't need much faith. If they just had faith as a mustard seed, they could move a mountain and nothing would be impossible for them. What does that mean? If faith as a mustard seed can move a mountain, then how much faith do I really have? And what mountains need moving? And is Jesus talking about physical mountains or spiritual mountains? Maybe both, but certainly spiritual mountains. So what deeds could we do if only we exercised a little more faith? And what work have we failed to do because of unbelief? What lesson would Jesus teach us? I don't have all the answers, but I can tell you one thing. Whenever I have stepped out in faith, God has always blessed it. So I like to say that God never spanks his kids for stepping out in faith. But let's face the fact that some problems do require more faith, prayer, and discipline than others. Some satanic strongholds are fortified and not easily torn down. The devil has his territory that he fights to protect, and he will not yield unless forced to do so by a stronger force than himself. And that stronger force is in Jesus Christ. So Jesus told them, this kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting. We understand the role of prayer in spiritual warfare. According to Ephesians 6, prayer in the Spirit is one of our offensive weapons against the powers of darkness. The other weapon is the sword of the Spirit, which is the Word of God. And it is the shield of faith that will quench all the fiery darts of the wicked one. What about fasting? We see examples throughout the Bible of God's people fasting at critical times when they needed God's help. When we fast, we sacrifice the desires of our flesh to seek the Lord with all our hearts. Some evil requires faith, prayer, and fasting to overcome. How much are we willing to sacrifice to cast out Satan? Are we willing to deny ourselves, to pray, to be free from sin, or to free others from sin? Now, while they were staying in Galilee, Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is about to be betrayed into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And the third day he will be raised up." And they were exceedingly sorrowful. This was now the second time Jesus told them what was about to happen in Jerusalem. Each time he told them this, they were sorrowful about his death, and then they didn't hear that he would be raised up on the third day, or else they didn't understand what he meant. When they had come to Capernaum, those who received the temple tax came to Peter and said, "Does your teacher not pay the temple tax?" And he said, "Yes." And when he had come into the house, Jesus anticipated him, saying, "What do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of the earth take customs or taxes? From their sons or from strangers?" Peter said to him, "From strangers." Jesus said to him, "Then the sons are free. Nevertheless, lest we offend them, go to the sea, cast in a hook, and take the fish that comes up first. And when you have opened its mouth, you will find a piece of money. Take that and give it to them for me and you." Now, Matthew is the only gospel writer to share this vignette. It probably caught his attention because he had been a tax collector in Capernaum. The temple tax was collected by the Levites. This annual tax of half a shekel was the equivalent of 2 days' wages. It was used to maintain the temple. When the tax collectors asked Peter if his teacher paid the temple tax, he said that he did. And then Peter went to the house where Jesus was staying. He must have been shocked when Jesus said, "What do you think, Simon? From whom do the kings of the earth take customs or taxes, from their sons or from strangers?" From this comment, we know that Jesus sees everything. There's no detail of our lives that escapes his attention. We do not see him, but he is there nonetheless, watching over everything. He cares for us, for he knows the troubles we face, and he can meet our needs if we will bring them to him. Now, in that culture, when the Romans would conquer a nation, they would force the people to pay taxes, but the Roman citizens would be exempt. How much more would the emperor's own sons be exempt? Jesus was the Son of God, and Peter was an adopted son. It was not necessary for them to pay the temple tax. But Jesus did not want to cause any offense, so he told Peter to go fishing, and he would find 1 shekel in the mouth of the fish he caught so he could pay the temple tax for both of them. Now, wouldn't it be great if we could just go fishing to get the money to pay our taxes? Now, here's an important principle we could easily miss. Jesus knew that the temple tax didn't apply to him. He was free of the obligation. He could have insisted on his rights and refused to pay it. But if he would have done that, then he would have offended others. The collectors of the temple tax would not have understood. So Jesus went to the extra trouble of avoiding offending others. The Apostle Paul had this same attitude. When writing to the Corinthians about disputable matters, such as whether it was okay to buy meat in the marketplace that had been sacrificed to an idol, Paul said in 1 Corinthians 10:31, "Therefore, whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Give no offense, either to the Jews or to the Greeks or to the church of God, just as I also please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved." We can so easily major in the minors. We form our opinions and make an issue of them. We insist on our own rights, but are we considering the other person? Jesus laid aside his rights and laid down his life to save us. Paul denied himself many freedoms so that he would not offend others. Are we willing to deny ourselves and set aside our own rights for the good of others? We live in a fallen world where evil abounds, but we can overcome it by our faith. When we encounter great strongholds of the enemy, then we should consider defeating them through fasting and prayer. Finally, we should take pains to do what is right in the eyes of everyone and not to merely please ourselves. That is the Jesus style. Well, thank you for joining us and for watching this, and we would love you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. That helps us a lot. May God bless you.